Sunday, let's make a chicken pot pie. If you watched my video on braised chicken, you'll know that I cooked ahead, partially cooked ahead some chicken for a chicken pot pie. We're going to use that now, and I'm going to put an ingredient list for you at the end of the video. So let's get started. I've got everything ready for us to go. So we're going to start, as we do with so many things, with a mirepoix. I have a stick of butter in here. Now, this is 1 onion. This is a 1/2 cup celery. It's got 3 stalks. And this is 2 carrots. It works out to a little over a cup. Now, this is not our normal mirepoix. You know, if you watch my videos, you know I tell you chop finely. And that's because we're trying to release the flavors quickly. We're making a chicken pot pie, so we're going to cook it for a longer time. And so I've cut the veggies up into bigger pieces. They're chunks. We're going to let these sit and sizzle. A mirepoix, again, is a flavor base that is 2 parts onions, 1 part carrots, 1 part celery. Let's sprinkle a little salt on. And I have some rosemary here, because I love the flavor of rosemary in chicken pot pie. This is rosemary that I cut and put in a brown paper bag, letting it dry. So it's partially dry now. It smells just about as good as fresh when you dry it that way. Of course, I have paper bags of sage and rosemary and oregano and different things around, because I much prefer that. So we've got our rosemary, we've got our salt, we've got our vegetables in here. We're going to let those sizzle. And I'll come back. Be about 5 minutes. Okay. These are becoming translucent, and we're not cooking them done yet. That's 1 potato. It was actually a larger potato than I should have cut, but I'm going to go ahead and put it all in here. Got this up pretty high. And this is, it's actually 3 chicken thighs cut up. It's a little over a pound. Gonna put a lid on that. Let it simmer for a few minutes, and I'll be right back. Well, our vegetables have been simmering away. They're not fully done because there's a lot more cooking to do. But I'm going to take them out. And I should tell you that before I started, I made a crust. I have crust in the refrigerator. And I am going to, this particular chicken pot pie I'm making enough for 2. So if you want to make, but I'm not going to make a great big one. I'm going to make a small one, and then I'm going to make some for the freezer. this butter has thickened up, but some of it came out, so I'm going to add a little schmaltz here, about a tablespoonful or so, because we're going to make a roux and then a sauce velouté, which I've talked to you about before. Sauce velouté is fat and flour and broth. And so I have here a ½ cup of flour, and this is plain flour, all-purpose flour. So you want to add just a little salt. That was about a quarter teaspoonful. I did salt the vegetables, so we don't really need any more than that. So we're making our roux, and we're going to let it brown a little bit. Yeah, I probably needed to add more of the schmaltz, but I think this will be fine, because I started with a stick of butter. And we want to let that simmer a bit so that we get rid of the pasty flavor. Oops, I left a carrot. That's all right. And I have here a quart of chicken broth. This was not canned chicken broth. We cooked some chicken and saved the broth. And we're going to add the cold broth to the hot roux. Now, there are many different recipes for chicken pot pie. Some of them you will see add cream or milk. I don't. I think that the chicken broth itself gives it a richness of flavor, and I just never put milk in mine. If you make your sauce velouté right, you do not need to add cream. Now you whisk, whisk, whisk. I'm actually putting, I guess that's about 3 cups. And if you see, there are no lumps here. But there's a lump. Or some that's not yet dissolved. So you whisk it until it's all dissolved. So we need that to come up a little hotter. And let it simmer for a minute. I'm going to taste. That's very rich. Very creamy. Probably needs just a little bit more salt. Okay, we're going to put our vegetables and meat back in, and this is going to be a pan totally full, because as I said, this is going to be 2 chicken pot pies, a 9-inch one for dinner, and then a small one for the freezer. I'm going to put this juice back in. You'll see that juice is a little bit thickened too, and that's the starch from the potatoes. And I'm looking at this, it looks a little bit thicker than I want it, because it has more cooking to do. So I'm going to add some more of the broth. Yes, this is a handful. Now this is going to cook in the oven for 35 to 40 minutes. So you don't want everything to be totally done. Otherwise you'll have mush. And I'm going to add here at the end, I hope I don't overflow. My potato was bigger than I intended. These are frozen sweet peas. If you had fresh sweet peas, green peas, you would put them in at the beginning along with the other vegetables. But these are frozen and I don't want them to be mush. So I'm going to let this sit until the peas are hot. I'm going to let it cook. And then I'll set it aside and get out my crust. Yes, I'm living dangerously here. If I don't make a mess, my day is not complete. I'll be back in a few. Okay, we're going to do the crust now. I made the crust, the pie crust dough ahead of time. And if you want the recipe for the pie crust dough, I'm going to post the link in this video. But it is basic buttery pie crust dough. And it's your basic 3-2-1 recipe. And I've made, and that's explained in the video, the basic 3-2-1 pie crust. So this one I've made a little lighter than this one. This is going to be the bottom crust, and I'm making this pie in a cast iron skillet. This is a little smaller than a 10-inch. I'll tell you about this skillet. This is a Krone Craft skillet. I've got flour all over it. Made in Denmark sometime around 1900. And this belonged to Fred's grandmother, Velma. And we're not sure how long she had it or where she got it. But we know she made lots of good food in it because she's one of those cooks that cooked for, 15, 20, 25 people at a time at almost every meal. So there's been a lot of biscuits and cornbread in that pan. And it's one of those things that, God forbid the house caught on fire, I'd grab it before I ran. Okay, so we're going to roll this out to be our bottom crust. And this recipe generally makes more than you need for a 9-inch crust. I always have just a little bit left over. And with that, I'm going to make at least one, maybe two, little chicken pot pies for the freezer. Which is one of the reasons my pan was so full. I was making enough for multiple pies. Or, a 10-inch pie. Getting there. My pastry cloth here has circles. So, because this is a deep dish pie, I want to roll it out bigger than 9-inch. And while you were gone, I moved the chicken pot pie mixture off the heat, put it to the side so it'd be cooling a little bit, and I split it up. I'm not happy with that. Let's see. I'm pretty sure we are big enough here. Yes. And as I said, there'll be a little left over for me to make a couple of small chicken pies. I need some practice at hitting the center here. When you're making a 2-crust pie, deep dish or regular, you don't want to stretch the dough out. You want to push back just a little bit so that you get it up against the sides without stretching it, because when you cook it, it will shrink, and if you've stretched it tight, it'll pull it away. And gotta move it over just a little and redo all of my nice work. Okay, scissors. Going to cut away and leave a little skirt. Not a whole lot of a skirt, but a little bit. Move that to the side. And now the top crust. A little flour. Someone in the comments of the pie crust video asked me about the pastry cloth and the rolling pin cover. If you don't have one, if you're not used to using one, I highly recommend it. It really makes rolling pie crust a lot easier. I got mine on Amazon. I think there are a lot of places you can get them. And it was not very expensive, but it has been a huge labor saver. I know some of you know why I keep turning the dough over instead of moving my rolling pin. I go in one direction until it's almost the size that I want, and then I use the rolling pin to get spots I've left. But we mostly go in one direction to make sure, and turn the crust to make sure it's not stuck. If you just keep moving it around, it's likely to get stuck. Now that's less likely, of course, with a pastry cloth. But you don't have to have a pastry cloth. You can do this, directly on your counter. You can do it on parchment paper. You can do it on aluminum foil. And if you're doing it on those, then sometimes it's a struggle to keep it from sticking. So that's why I roll it and turn it, and I don't change the direction of the rolling pin until after I've got it out to a pretty good size and have flipped it over a couple times. Okay, that one's done. Let's roll it up. Let's see if I can hit the center next time. Here I have my pie crust. And I'm going to have to do this a little off camera. Fred, could you move the camera just a little bit for me, please? Because I don't want to put this on my pastry cloth. Just showing my mess over here. This is the pie, the filling, and it's thickened up nicely. And I took out some to make my small pie. And I don't want to lose any of the juice because I don't want the pie to be dry when it's done. Yeah, it's going to hold it all. Okay. I'm going to roll my pastry cloth up a little bit. I want to get it out of the way. Okay, here's our pie crust. I'm going to try to come close to the middle. I'm not. I don't have a real good track record on that going here. But there we go. We're going to cut the skirt again. And the reason we're doing this is because we want a little flap to make a scallop. A flute. Okay. Let's go around it and turn that flap under. Because we're going to flute this and make it pretty for company. Let me try to do that so you can see it. I just have the two pieces, the top and the bottom, and I roll them a little bit. Okay. Now, the fluting is really just pinch 2 fingers, pinching the 3rd finger. I need to cut a little bit more of that flap off. This dough has been worked a little bit more than the dough I would be using for a custard pie or a fruit pie. I want it to be a little tougher. And my knife, you need to cut some little slits to let the steam escape. Now the last step is I'm beating an egg. And I have my little silicone brush here, and I'm going to brush the pie crust with this beaten egg. And that's really just for looks. I'm not sure it does anything else. It may actually help it stay a little crispier. I have my oven preheating to 375. And this is going to take about 45 minutes to cook. I'll check it at 35. And while it's cooking, I'm going to make my little freezer pies, and I'll show those to you too. Be back. Pie is cooking, the main pie, in the 9-inch pan. These are the two that I made for the freezer. And this was all the dough that was left. And I used all of the extra that was in the pan. So this is a lunch or a dinner for Fred and me. And I did it the same way, except that I used a fork to crimp the edges. And these will go in the freezer. They will cook frozen at 400 for an hour. Will give you a nice crispy crust and cook it all the way through. And these will be in the freezer. They'll be good in the freezer for weeks, but they won't last that long. We'll come back when our pie is done. Well, dinner is served. I wish you could be here with us so that you could smell and taste what turned out, I think, to be a beautiful chicken pot pie. Let me get you a little closer so that you can see how this basic buttery 3-2-1 crust turned out. I think this is good enough for Sunday dinner. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. So glad you could be here with us. Hope to see you again tomorrow.